sunshines. If you follow my TikTok or my Instagram, you know that I read a lot. And I have been wanting to make some longer YouTube videos about the books that I read. And what better way to kick that off than by jumping on a trend started by a more popular booktuber. So today we are going to be attempting to solve an Agatha Christie murder mystery. This is 100% inspired by Emmy's video, which I will link in the description, but I've seen 2 other YouTubers try this so far. And as soon as I saw Emmy's video, I knew that I had to try this because I have been reading Agatha Christie since I was honestly way too young. I think I was like 8 the first time I read one of her books. And I am someone who likes to try to guess who the killer is as I'm reading mysteries, so this is really fun for me. People I have seen do this in other videos have had like whiteboards or cork boards and sticky notes, but I am a digital gal, so we will have PowerPoints, we will have spreadsheets. Books Like Whoa has a video where she talks about how to guess whodunit in a Christie book, and I have literally watched it and taken notes, so I am prepared, I am ready, I am channeling my inner amateur detective. And the book that we are going to be attempting to solve is Crooked House, which apparently is was one of Agatha Christie's favorite books that she wrote, and it's also a little bit more contained than some of her other stories. It's about one family and all of their mess, so I think it'll be a good place to start. We have our murder. The victim is Aristide Leonidas, who is the patriarch of the Leonidas family, and we don't actually get to meet him before he dies. So our narrator is some unnamed British gentleman who just finished service in World War II, and he is in love with a British young lady named Sophia. And he's on a date with Sophia, he asks her to marry him, and she says she can't because her grandfather was just killed and it looks really suspicious, and they're going to do an autopsy and the entire family is under observation. So far, the only member of the family we've met is Sophia, and it looks like the narrator is going to investigate because his father is the Commissioner of Scotland Yard. So Sophia has asked him to use what he's learned from his dad, basically, to poke around. Okay, I think we've met all of the suspects, so I'm going to go through my case file with you guys and talk about who the suspects are, how the murder happened, and my sort of thoughts on everything. So the victim was Aristide Leonidas, who was a Greek immigrant. He was a restaurant tycoon and he had tons and tons of money, but apparently he got some of that money from crooked business dealings. They say that he never did anything that was illegal, but he liked to kind of push the law and bend the rules in a lot of places. His first wife was like a noble family, so he married well. And apparently he had a really happy marriage, and only 2 of his children still live with him because a lot of them have either died or have moved out of the country. He also is remarried. His first wife passed away, and his second wife is 53 years younger than him, which apparently his family really didn't care for. They were really upset about it. And all of his family members stand to inherit a lot of money from his death, but he was apparently really generous and probably would have given them anything that they asked for. So I'm thinking that maybe the motive wasn't financial. Right now, the police and the narrator who is working with the police are assuming that the killer was motivated by the inheritance, but I'm thinking maybe there's something else going on. So, the cause of death was poison. Apparently, Aristides had diabetes and he got nightly insulin injections, and someone replaced his insulin with his eye drops, which contained a poison called like ursinine, I think. And when he got his insulin injection, it killed him. And what's important about this is that everyone who lives in the house knew where his insulin was kept, so anyone could have switched it out. They say that, like, everyone in the house had the means and the opportunity, so they need to figure out who had the motive to kill him. So, moving on to the suspects. Sophia Leonidas is the first member of the family we meet, and she's kind of a non-character for a lot of the first third of the book. She sort of just exists to be a reason for Charles, who is the narrator, to get involved in the case because he's in love with her and he wants to marry her. She recently returned from overseas and apparently had a really good relationship with her grandfather. She seems to take on a lot of responsibilities around the house. Like, it kind of seems like she's running things, even though I think she's like the youngest adult woman in the house. She really hates Brenda, who is her grandfather's second wife, and she seems really cynical. She seems to kind of expect the worst from people. Next, moving on to Brenda. Brenda was the one to actually administer the injection that killed Aristides. She's his second wife. She's much, much younger than him. And she's rumored to be having an affair with Lawrence Brown, who is the tutor of Sophia's younger siblings. Sophia says that Brenda couldn't have committed the murder because she's quote unquote too careful. And she does seem genuinely upset that her husband died. It seems like she genuinely did care about him. She does seem kind of like airheaded, for lack of a better term, and she kind of resents the family for how they've treated her, and she seems to resent that they still live in the house after she and Aristides got married. She is the most obvious suspect because she's the one who actually administered the injection, but the narrator talks about, like, if she had been the one to kill him, she would have just thrown away the eye drops so that no one knew that it wasn't just a regular seizure. It really doesn't make sense for her to leave evidence that she poisoned her husband, so it's almost like she's too obvious, right? Lawrence is the tutor who supposedly is having an affair with Brenda. But I don't think they're actually having an affair. I don't think they're actually involved. I'm just not getting that vibe. But Sophia thinks that Lawrence doesn't have the guts to murder anybody, and he does seem extremely nervous and fidgety and, like, high-strung. He was excused from military service in World War II because he has a religious objection to killing. And for some reason, he thinks everyone suspects him of the murder, which makes him feel, like, really paranoid. So I feel like there's something going on with him because he's really paranoid, like I said, but I don't know if it's necessarily that he's the murderer. So Philip is, I think, the younger son, and he is married to Magda, and he's Sophia's dad. He's an author who writes historical novels, and Sophia describes him as being very cold and, like, seemingly emotionless and really in control of himself. I thought it was interesting that he tried to convince the police that his dad's death was an accident. He tried to convince them that nobody killed him, which, like, is kind of sus. Why are you trying to
act like this wasn't obviously a murder. And one thing that I thought was interesting is that the narrator keeps bringing up who in the house is a smoker and who isn't. So I feel like that's going to be important at some point because it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up. So Philip does not smoke. I don't know if that's actually going to mean anything, but he doesn't smoke. Magda is Philip's wife, so she's Sophia's mom, and she's an actress, which is kind of a red flag because according to Books Like Woe's video, actresses and doctors are the two most common professions of killers in Agatha Christie books. And if there's ever an actress in one of her books, something's going on with them. So, one strike for Magda. She's apparently not very popular in the theater scene for whatever reason. She's very self-centered. She says that she's so excited that she can leave the house now that her father-in-law is dead, which, like, why couldn't you leave the house before? What was keeping you there? And it's hard to kind of nail down. It's hard to nail her down because she is really good at hiding how she feels, and she's apparently a very heavy smoker. Roger is the older brother, I believe. He is Philip's brother, and he's married to Clemency. And he's like a bumbling, well-meaning type, but apparently he has quite the temper. He really, really doesn't like Brenda. He not only accused her of the murder, but threatened to kill her. So there's that temper. And he's a smoker. Again, smoking comes up a lot. He apparently smokes pipes and has like one special pipe that he cares about a lot. I don't know if that's going to be important later. And says that he would do anything for his wife. Like, he's weirdly into his wife. He's a little bit obsessed with her, and it's a little bit weird. Clemency is Roger's wife, and she is a stone cold bitch. She is a nuclear scientist, and she's very, like, reserved and impersonal and, like, Ice Queen vibes. She seems very intelligent, very capable, but she didn't like her father-in-law, which is interesting. But she's open about that. She's like, yeah, I didn't like the guy. And what I thought was interesting and maybe a little bit suspicious is that Roger is her second husband, and her first husband died of tuberculosis. So, like, oh, did she poison her first husband and now she's poisoned her father-in-law? Is she like a Black Widow type character? That could be interesting. And then we have Edith de Havilard, who is the sister of the first wife, who is now dead, who apparently moved in and like became a surrogate mother to the kids when their mom died. She super didn't like her brother-in-law, but again, she was like really open about that. And she really likes to garden, and that's really all that's come up about her, but the narrator, Charles, makes a note that she seems like she'd be capable of murder. And then there's Eustace and Josephine. I'm not sure if they even really count as suspects because they're both teenagers. Josephine hasn't even come up yet, and I'm like almost 40% of the way through the book. Eustace is 16 and is disabled due to like partial paralysis in his legs. And so far, the only thing that's come up about Josephine is that Brenda thinks that she's really sneaky. So maybe that'll go somewhere. Maybe not. I don't really take these two seriously as suspects because they're literal children, but maybe that's a mistake. So those are all the suspects. Right now, I don't have any strong theories about who the killer was because I feel like I need to sort of get to know everyone's motivations a little bit better. But I think that Clemency has something going on with her. And I think there's more going on with Magda, the actress, and with Sophia. I feel like Sophia's hiding something.
Hello. It is the next day. I have had coffee, I have been reading over breakfast, and the plot has thickened. I have my notes here, so if I'm looking down, it's because I'm making sure I don't leave anything out. Charles has finally spoken to Josephine, who is the last family member that he hadn't met. And she's like 12, so obviously I don't think she's the murderer, but she is a very obviously neurodivergent child who is obsessed with detective novels and has decided that she's going to solve her grandfather's murder. And she dropped a ton of clues, like this huge expedition dump with a bunch of dirty secrets that nobody knew until that point. So we have some meat, we have something to sink our teeth into, and we have some potential motives. So according to Josephine, her parents, Philip and Magda, lost a lot of money on a play that flopped. And the reason they lost money is because Aristide, the grandfather who was poisoned, refused to finance it. So they ended up using their own money to pay for the play, and then it did really badly and they lost all their investments. So maybe there was a little bit of resentment. Maybe they were hoping on an inheritance to bail them out. Josephine also revealed that Roger and Clemency were going to flee the country in secret because Roger was in some kind of financial trouble. Josephine thought it was that he embezzled funds from his company that he runs for his dad, but the police did some investigating and it turned out that the company was just going bankrupt because Roger is a really shitty businessman who inherited his father's company with no experience and did a really bad job of it. But they found like pretty indisputable evidence that Aristide was going to bail the company out. So Roger didn't have a reason to kill his dad because he knew that his dad was going to fix all of his financial problems. So he's actually worse off now that his dad is dead, because his company's going to go under. What else? The will has some shenanigans, which if there's an Agatha Christie novel and there's a will, there's going to be something funky going on with the will. It just always happens. In this case, the entire family witnessed Aristides signing the will, and but when they found the will to read it, it was blank. It was unsigned. So nobody knows what happened there. Did someone do some shenanigans? Did someone switch the wills? Because there were so many witnesses, this will might still be binding, so his family might still get the inheritances that they thought they were going to get. But there's a chance that because he doesn't have a will, everything is going to go to his wife, Brenda, which the family is very upset about. But I really don't think Brenda killed him. I don't think she's, like, smart enough or passionate enough or calculating enough to murder somebody. So I do think it was one of his kids or grandkids. I am going to commit to that now. I think it was a member of the family who killed him. And I kind of am suspecting his daughter-in-laws right now. So Clemency is Roger's wife, and Roger was about to go bankrupt and lose everything because his company was going under. And they weren't going to get help. Like, Roger is too proud and didn't want to go to his dad and ask for money or whatever. So I feel like maybe Clemency poisoned her father-in-law thinking that Roger wasn't going to go for him for help. And by the time they found out that Aristides had found out about the company and was going to bail them out, it was too late and she had already switched the insulin and he died. So I feel like that could be what happened. I feel like Clemency might have poisoned him so Roger could get his inheritance, because she didn't know that he was going to bail the company out. I also feel like a lot of shade has been thrown at Magda. There was this weird scene where Charles and his dad, who is the Commissioner of Scotland Yard, were talking about what makes a murderer, and the dad just kept going on about how murderers are really vain and full of themselves and love to talk about the crime, and that to me fits Magda very well. She has been super into everything that's going on. She's been really loving the theatrics of it, so I'm like, we know that she and her husband were in bad financial straits because their father-in-law wouldn't finance their play. So maybe it was like a revenge thing. Maybe she wants to be free of her father-in-law's financial control. So I feel like either of the daughter-in-laws could have done it. Evil daughter-in-laws, that's my theory right now. This is the same day. I just got cold, so I put on a sweater. I feel vindicated. So I have been feeling a little suspicious of Sophia. I have felt like there's something that she's hiding, like we aren't getting the whole picture with her. Like I said, she just kind of exists in the story to be a reason for Charles to get involved in the case, but she has been like really insistent on Charles investigating this murder, and she's been really like, she's been acting very suspicious. And we just found out a possible reason for that. So they found the new will that Aristide made, because of course everyone has a secret will. It's an Agatha Christie novel. Of course he had a secret will, right? And in this will, he leaves, I think, £100,000 to Brenda, his wife, and everything else, his entire estate, to Sophia. So nothing for his sons, nothing for his other grandchildren, nothing for his daughter-in-laws or his sister-in-law. Everything goes to Sophia, with the understanding that because she's the most responsible person in the family, which I said earlier, I did pick up on that, she'll take care of everyone else. Like, the understanding is that she's going to manage the family's finances and sort of be in charge of everyone. So I feel like maybe Sophia knew. Supposedly this will was secret, but I feel like maybe Sophia knew that she was gonna get everything, and I feel like maybe that's why she's been so insistent on Charles figuring out who killed her grandfather, because I think she's afraid that they're going to come after her when they find out that everything is gonna go to her and that no one else is actually going to get an inheritance. I don't necessarily think that she's the killer, but this makes a lot of sense. It explains why she's been acting so sketchy, and I do think she knows more than she's let on. We also found out that Roger and Clemency actually wanted to declare bankruptcy so they could go live in Barbados and be poor together, I guess. And Clemency was actually like really, really excited about it because she hates being rich, and like, I feel you, girl. Rich people are the worst. So I still feel like Clemency might be the killer, but now I'm thinking maybe she realized that her father-in-law was going to bail them out and that they were going to have to stay in England. So she killed him to keep him from bailing out the company, so they would have to go bankrupt and they'd still be able to leave and get a new start somewhere else. I'm also still very suspicious of Magda. She is like really insistent on sending Josephine to boarding school in Switzerland, and Josephine is the one who's been investigating everything and knows everybody's secrets. So I'm like, what does your kid know that you don't want the police to find out about? What does Josephine know that Magda doesn't want to come into the open? I don't know if she's the killer, but I do think that like she's hiding something. So we'll see. Kenna, who do you think the murderer was? Who do you think killed him? What about you, Lily? Got any theories? The plot continues to thicken. Someone has now tried to murder Josephine, who I will remind everyone is literally 12. This is an actual child, and someone has hit her over the head with a marble doorstop and she is now in the hospital in critical condition, and they don't know if she's gonna live. So clearly, this child who likes to play detective had discovered something that somebody didn't want her to know or didn't want her to tell the police about. This changes things a little bit. I'm not sure how before I kind of was leaning towards suspecting Magda of being the killer, but I don't think she would have tried to kill Josephine because, for one thing, Josephine is her daughter. But even if she was capable of killing her own child, she was making plans to send Josephine to boarding school in Switzerland, so like she already had a way to get rid of her. I don't think she would make plans to send her away and bludgeon her. Like that's just a lot. I'm also not sure about Clemency, but I'm very suspicious of Sophia. I'm starting to wonder if maybe Sophia's our poisoner. Part of the reason for that is that Sophia is the one who found Josephine, and the police think that the killer set a booby trap for her. They like put the doorstop on top of the door so that when she opened the door, it would fall on her and hit her head. But even the police admit that it's really crazy that that worked because it's very flimsy and it could have gone wrong. So I'm wondering if Sophia didn't just catch her sister alone and then beat her over the head and then pretend, like, set it up like there had been a booby trap to throw the police off. That seems very plausible to me. Like the poison, the doorstop was something that everyone in the house had access to. The little shed where the trap was set is something that everyone in the house had access to, so it could have been anybody. Charles also made a note that the chair that the person would have had to stand on to put the doorstop on top of the door to set the trap had clumps of dirt in the seat, which might be important later. Maybe someone will have muddy shoes or something. But also, remember that Edith really likes to garden, so maybe she's involved somehow? Possibly. She's the only person I can think of who would have a reason to have muddy shoes. We'll see. Let's keep reading. I should also mention that Charles did find a bunch of love letters between Brenda and Lawrence, so they are having an affair. They are together. I still don't think either of them is the murderer because I still don't think either of them is capable of killing someone because they both kind of seem very not the type, I guess. Okay. There has been a second murder. Josephine is fine. She's out of the hospital. She's back at the house. And whoever tried to kill her before has tried to poison her. But the poison ended up being taken by the wrong person. So they actually killed Josephine's nanny, not Josephine. And I think Josephine is about to tell Charles who the murderer was. So I feel like I've got to make my final guess now. So the police arrested Brenda and Lawrence because of the letters, and they were in jail waiting for their trial when the poisoning happened. So we know that neither of them was the killer, which I kind of already knew. I said earlier that I felt like they were a red herring, and they totally were, so they don't matter. They're gone. I don't think it was either of the daughter-in-laws. I was very suspicious of them for a while, but I don't think either of them did it. I think that Magda has something that she's trying to hide. I think it's very suspicious that she is so gung-ho to get her daughter out of the country. I think she might know who the murderer is and might be protecting the murderer. but I don't think she's the killer. And I don't think Clemency is the killer. I think she's just really weird. It might be Sophia. I'm really torn between Sophia and Edith. I definitely think it was one of the women. The men in this story really never feel like suspects to me. I really have always felt like it was one of the women in the family, and now I feel like it was either Sophia or Edith. So it may have been Sophia, because Sophia has said some things about like wanting to be free from her family and not being happy there. But Sophia also said that she knew that she had been left the inheritance. She knew about her grandfather's second will. So I feel like if she knew that he was going to make her the new head of the family, basically, she wouldn't have killed him, because she doesn't want to be the head of the family. Like, she doesn't want to be tied to these people for the rest of her life. And now she's never going to be able to get rid of them. So that's like the opposite of what she wants. So I feel like Sophia's in the clear. And that leaves Edith, which I'm not entirely sure why Edith would have killed him. I know that she didn't like Aristide. I can't remember who, I think it might have been the nanny, said that she was in love with him, but no one else has confirmed that. So maybe it was like she loves him, but she can't have him, or maybe she did just hate him. Either way, she had very strong feelings about him. And she's very protective of the family. So maybe she thought that he was going to let Roger's business go under, or something. And I can't get over like the clods of dirt on the chair. I feel like that's such a small detail, and I feel like in Agatha Christie books it's always the small details that give away who the murderer was, especially if you've read any of the Miss Marple books. It's always like a tiny little thing that solves the whole case. And I feel like the dirt being on the chair means that it was Edith who set that trap, because she's always working in the garden. So I think my final guess is that Edith is the killer, and I'm gonna read the final reveal now, and we'll see if I guessed right. Okay, so in a shocking turn of events, Edith has committed a murder-suicide and has driven her car off like a ravine with Josephine in the car. And she left a signed confession. I'm gonna read it. My expectation is that this will be opened after my death. I wish to enter into no details, but I accept full responsibility for the deaths of my brother-in-law, Aristide Leonidas, and Janet Rowe, nanny. I hereby solemnly declare that Brenda Leonidas and Lawrence Brown are innocent of the murder of Aristide Leonidas. It says that she was sick and that she only had a few months left to live, and she decided to take this way out and spare two innocent people the ordeal of being charged with a murder they did not commit. But like, holy shit. Why would you also kill the 12-year-old if you're already going to... Oh my god. That's a lot. That's kind of... Wow. Wow. So I guess I was right, but I'm, like, I don't understand why she also killed Josephine. I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna finish this. I'll be back. Oh shit. Okay. We've got a second plot twist. So the Charles, the narrator, just found Josephine's notebook that she keeps all her detective notes in. And it says, Together, we looked down on the first entry in the little black book, written in an unformed, childish hand. Today I killed my grandfather. I was to wonder afterwards that I could have been so blind. The truth had stuck out so clearly all along. Josephine, and only Josephine, fitted in with all the necessary qualifications. Her vanity, her persistent self-importance, her delight in talking, her reiteration on how clever she was and how stupid the police were. I never would have considered her because she was a child, but children have committed murders, and this particular murder had been well within a child's compass. Oh man. That's totally what I did. Like, I didn't even consider her a suspect because she was a little kid. Ooh. Ooh. That explains why Magda was acting so weird. I wonder if Magda knew that Josephine was the one who did it and was trying to get her out of the country before they caught her. Ooh, this is good. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. Wow. So that was abrupt and surprising. Maybe not the most realistic, but you know, who am I to argue realism with the best-selling mystery author of all time, right? Wow. This was really fun though. I really enjoyed playing detective, even though I did not correctly guess the culprit, and I would love to do this again with other mysteries in the future. But that's all. I hope this was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I hope you have a blessed and magical day. Bye.